Erev Tov Zichron Yaakov. Good morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Greetings, my name's Wayne Firestone. We've got friends from around the world. My good friend in Raleigh, Jean, Sipora in Yerushalayim, Beth in Indianapolis, and Gabriela, you're gonna hear about in a moment. We are sort of in spring. I mean, we've sprung forward, some of us with our clocks. Things are starting to open up, like these stargazers next to me, which smell amazing. That's what I want to ask you about first. Before we get into the amazing art that we're going to explore today, someone from Carmiel, Noreen, and an Erev Tov from Haifa. Tell us about the openings that are happening around you for spring, or that you're looking forward to. What are you looking forward to opening this spring? Is it some flower? Is it a show that you're going to see? Is it a bottle of champagne for tonight if you're watching the Oscars? So no matter where you are, spring's a time where we tend to, sort of be open to new things. And I think that is one of the things we always like about Gabriela's programs with us is she opens us up to the world of art and new ways of looking at the world, sometimes in miniature, sometimes in a much, much larger installation. And as you're putting those, the people are looking forward to the melting of snow covering the front and backyard. Hey, Debbie in Haifa, good to have you with us. We have a strong Haifa following these days after doing 2 segments of virtual tours in Haifa. We're happy to have you here, as well as Judy in Beersheba, another one from Helen in Haifa. So we're overrepresented today in the north, but so glad to have everyone here to talk about their openings. We are delighted to be able to share, really for the first time, a different side of Gabriela. Gabriela as an artist and as someone who just had her own opening with a show. She's graciously agreed to pull the curtain behind her virtual studio. And in addition to introducing us to 2 artists that we've not discussed before or learned about before, whose work we're going to look at, we're going to open with her opening with Gabriela's art about motherhood. A topic that in this international, we just celebrated International Day of Women, and Gabriela really has taken a fascinating view of motherhood through art, and this will take us back through a historic sense of looking at motherhood, as well as a contemporary one for Gabriela herself, who is a mother and has found a way to express that in her art as well. So Gabriela, tell us a little about how you're feeling after your opening and what it means for you to do, and share with us a little bit about your own art, in addition to some of the colleagues that you enjoy so much.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me again. Nice to see you, Wayne, and nice to see all these names and places. I miss Israel. I haven't been there since June. It's a really exciting moment for me, I have to say. I've been a working artist for as long as I've been an adult. And this is my first big commercial gallery solo show. So I've had solo shows before. I've been in a lot of group shows before, but this is my first big solo in a big gallery. It's in Chelsea, New York. Chelsea is the main gallery neighborhood in the city, is one of the world's art centers. So it's exciting. The opening was packed. The show is open until April 8th. For those of you who are visiting New York, you're always welcome to email me, and maybe I'll be in the gallery when you're there. But I wanted to also say that after our presentation today, as usual, I'm going to send everyone at AIFL the links to all the shows that we're going to see, including my own and my website and my Instagram, so you can follow me. But it's nice to share this part of me as well. And I put myself in very good company today with the other 2 artists that we're going to see. One is a very contemporary artist, a young 35-year-old artist who is Also having a very big moment in New York right now, and has a show open right now in the Lower East Side. And the other one is an artist who is no longer with us and is a really, really important artist for a lot of people working today still, even though he passed away in the 90s. So Wayne, should I just jump right in?
I think you should. I know how much material you're covering today, and I know there is likely to be a lot of questions along the way. So we'll see, how much we'll do in between, and save some time at the end, hopefully, to be able to get in some of the questions as well. So a big mazel tov on your milestone, and tell us a little bit about motherhood through art.
That I will. All right. So yeah, so it's totally up to you in terms of the questions, whatever you see fit, just do what works. So this is a little kind of overview of the show. We're going to get closer to it. It's at Asya Geisberg Gallery in Chelsea, as I said. The show is called Epic, Heroic, Ordinary, and I'll explain a little bit more about that title soon. But the show starts from this large work that you're seeing on the right hand wall here. Here's kind of a straight on view of it. So first, I just want to tell you that everything that I make, everything in the show is in porcelain, which is a type of ceramic. I'm going to talk about my process a little more. This is by far the largest work in the show. It's about 12 feet wide. As you can see, it's about 9 feet tall. We put someone who works at the gallery for scale. And the title of this work is called Mom, not Mother, but Mom. And I want to tell you the genesis of this work, because it's kind of the genesis of all the work that I've been doing since then as well. So during the pandemic, when the pandemic just started, like many, many other artists, I lost two things: access to my studio and childcare. My daughter was just over 1 year old when the pandemic started. We had a babysitter, and all the help we had just evaporated. And I was left at home, with my husband as well, kind of like everyone, struggling to find time for myself while taking care of the baby. And one day during nap time, I made a drawing in my sketch pad, which I brought to you. This has never been publicly shown in any gallery. I made this drawing in my sketch pad with colored pencils. I didn't think about it as art with a capital A. I really was just making something to kind of comfort myself and amuse myself. And it's a self-portrait, really. I feel like this kind of creature who's always doing things, all the mother things. I'm like doing the shopping and checking my phone and feeding and picking up a stuffed animal from the floor and cooking and doing her hair. And I always have to be on the lookout for what I need to do. And my ears are always open. And I just made that. And it kind of sat in the back of my mind. And a few months later, once people started getting vaccinated, my daughter could go back to daycare, and I was able to go back to the studio. This work kind of came back to my mind. Now, until that moment, I had been working in ceramics. I'd been working in this method, but I'd never made anything that was explicitly about being a mother. I'd always kind of made more abstract work, kind of hidden the things I was thinking about in abstract forms and shapes. And I had this kind of moment where I was like, you know what? I was always worried about, is this a worthy topic of art? Is being a mother a worthy topic of art? Many artists are worried about this when they become mothers for the first time. Will people still take me seriously? What is this going to do to my career? Are people going to put me in a niche and say, oh, she's not serious about her career because she decided to become a mother? Am I only going to get to be in group shows about motherhood, kind of put in like this niche? But I had this moment where I was like, you know what? I am done worrying about what other people are worried about, think of me, what other people might think is important or not important. I feel like the pandemic had an effect like that for a lot of people, of kind of distilling priorities. What's really important to me? What can I not live without? And I realized the two things I can't live without is my family and my work and my art. And so I decided not only to kind of come out as a mother, as an artist, but to make the largest piece I'd made to date. And so when I went back to the studio, I immediately started working on Mom. And I'm going to show you some details. So Mom, unlike the drawing I made, Mom has a human head. Here she is. You can see she's not like a happy-go-lucky, relaxed kind of person. She's worried. She has a frown on her face. Her brows are furrowed. She kind of has dark circles on her under her eyes. I told you this is a self-portrait, right? Here I'm showing you so you can see a little bit the side of it. So the work is 12 by 9 feet large, but it's only 1/4 of an inch thick. So it really sits like a flat thing on the wall. And here are some details from the ceramic work. So, you know, there's lots of hands doing the cooking, picking up a hair barrette, my cracked iPhone screen. The ears are there. Those the ears to me are this recurring motif that comes back in my work a lot. The ear is the one of the sensory organs that we cannot turn off. Right? We can close our eyes, we can hold our nose, but we can't turn off our ears. They're always open, and especially parents' ears are always open to their children's the tiniest squeak from the little baby will wake us up, right? So here are some more scenes of from inside Mom, doing the hair. I'm going to do a close-up on this so I can tell you a little bit about my method in which I work. So as you can see, the lines are not just drawn into the clay, they are actually etched incised into the clay. I draw with a pin tool, literally a pin on a handle, when the clay is still wet. And what that does, it allows me to preserve a very kind of fluid and quick drawing line. It's really like drawing with a pencil or with a pen for me at this point. I'm so fluid in it. And then that translates into the finished sculpture. So little details like that. This texture that you're seeing under the armpit here, I created by, and here's another close-up, by pushing my fingers into the clay when it was still a little wet. And you can see that you could lift my fingerprints off of this sculpture. That is the reason I work with porcelain clay. Porcelain, unlike other types of clay, you know, we know the red clays that we make pots out of, there's dark brown clays and beige clays that are more like sculpture clays, more hardy and strong materials, but nothing is like porcelain when it comes to the resolution of detail that you can get from it. Porcelain remembers every single thing that's ever happened to it and shows it on its surface. It especially shows it on its surface in the method that I work in, which is that after it is fired for the first time, after it comes out of the kiln for the first time, I rub a black pigment into the skin of the clay, into the surface of the clay, and that really accentuates all the cracks and all the wrinkles and all the little scars and all the textures that I've left on the sculpture. So while porcelain is traditionally a material that we make, you know, fine china out of, things that are perfect and white and have no trace of the human hand on them, I use it for exactly the opposite purpose. Here are some more details. The cast iron frying pan. By the way, if you notice there's holes, you always notice holes in the work. That's because this is how the work is affixed to the wall. Mom is a puzzle, basically, made of 53 distinct pieces. And the way I install it is I build it on the wall like a puzzle, usually with an assistant. It takes a long time. So like the ears, you know, the breasts in my work are not by any means kind of pornographic breasts. They're nurturing breasts, they're feeding breasts, they're the mother breasts. This is both, could be both a bottle brush and a toilet brush, both of which I'm very experienced with. And you can really see how the line it's really like a drawing. The pacifier, the tote bags from going grocery shopping. Now, Mom is a snake, as you saw before. She's kind of this winding snake. She starts with that face and she ends in that squiggly tail. I actually wanted to show you something that you can't see when you come to the gallery. Here I am in the studio when I made it, is that Mom has two versions, two tails, two ends. And one is the one that you saw in the gallery where the work kind of floats above the floor. And this is the second version. You can see it's exactly the same piece, only it ends in a tail that kind of curves onto the floor. So there's two ways of installing and presenting this work. And every time I show it, I kind of decide if I want it lower down, kind of connected to the floor, or higher up. So that's Mom, and that's really the beginning of the show. Here, again, is an installation view from the exhibition. And on the left side, you see in the next wall is a series of portraits. These are also all porcelain with some glazing, with some painting. I've also started painting on top of my sculptures with acrylic and oil paint. So it's a lot, it's both a drawing, a sculpture, a painting, all of those things at the same time. I started making these portraits after I finished this big sculpture, and I was thinking about them in the world of my project. I think about them as worried mothers from the dawn of history until now. I'm very much an archaeology nerd, and a lot of the images in my work are inspired by or lifted from archaeology. So for example, this earring that this made up mom is wearing is a copy of the exact copy of a vase that was unearthed in Greece, made by the Minoans. The Minoans are what came before ancient Greek. And they worshipped the sea, and they worshipped the squid, the octopus as symbols of the sea. And the sea was this kind of mother figure that was both huge and terrifying, right? But also nurturing, and was the bringer of life, of food to the table of the Minoans. And so they worshipped it, her, as a giver of life. The earrings kind of are always this place for me to play in the work. And I kind of make up these earrings that are often these mashups between something that looks like kind of something sci-fi, or the Batman logo, or an ancient fertility sculpture. So they're a little bit ridiculous, but they're a little bit also historically informed, archaeologically informed. Here's another portrait from the show. So you notice there's a squiggly line of gold running down her face. What happened with this work is that it came out of the kiln cracked. There was a big crack running down this face. And usually I would do one of two things. I usually just throw away things that come out cracked from the kiln because they're broken. Or I know how to mend my sculptures in a way that you would never know. there was a crack there. You know, there's many, many techniques that sculptors can use to mend their sculptures. But here I decided something different. You know, I looked at her face. The work is called A Mother Determined. And she is kind of a determined person. And I thought this woman would not mind a scar on her face. She wouldn't hide it. She wouldn't give up and not leave the house. She would wear it with pride. And so I mended it, but in a way that is still, you can still feel it. And also I painted the crack with gold ink. Of course, in homage to the ancient Japanese tradition of mending cracks with gold, meaning rather than hide the thing that happened, to accentuate and celebrate it and say how much more lovely it makes the sculpture. This portrait is titled Blood Moon, which is her earring as well. She was also, by the way, broken in the kiln, and I just love the shape of that crack that happened. It's like an echoing image to her face, and so I kept it and I painted it red from the inside so you can really, really see it. So the next work I want to show you is the work here on the right, which also gave the exhibition its title. This is also a work in porcelain. We're going to look at it from close up in a minute. And it is called Epic, Heroic, Ordinary, the title of the show. So as I already told you, I'm kind of an archaeology nerd. And I know that in Greek and Roman times, they would often make these amphoras or vases that were celebratory of a certain event, either a mythological story or a grand battle that happened. And let's say, you know, from mythological, it could be the Theseus slaying the Minotaur, or some grand battle that had just been won, and someone makes an amphora to celebrate or to commemorate this narrative. And so usually there would be paintings in like these panels on the vessel. There would be these epic scenes of battle or of achievement or of victory. And I thought, okay, well, if I was this ancient amphora designer and I wanted to make an amphora that celebrates motherhood, what would my epic scenes be? And I thought, really, parenting is usually not made up of a series of epic grand gestures. Being someone's parent means to be there for them all the time. It's countless, endless little devotions. It's taking care of their body, but also taking care of their little spirits and their little hearts. It's being there for them for your whole life. If you're lucky, you get to be there for your children your whole life and dedicate yourself to them as much as you can, right? Nobody's perfect. And so these are the epic scenes of being a mother. So it's both epic and heroic, in my opinion, but both completely ordinary, right? No one's getting a Nobel Prize here for brushing her kid's hair. And so those are the kind of two worlds that the work lives in. The top of the amphora has this element of I kind of slit the neck of the amphora and twirled it around. This is still porcelain, because I'm very interested in this thing that my work does, that it's between flat and three-dimensional, right? Between being a drawing and being a sculpture. And I always like to kind of accentuate that aspect of the work. And of course, that flowing motif, what you're seeing here, is a totally lifted from ancient Greek and Roman vessels. But if in their case, it denotes water or the sea, in my case, it denotes life. Could be blood, could be milk, could be just life energy flowing through this thing. This is the second amphora of the exhibition. It's titled The Three Goddesses of Flowing Abundance. Speaking of flowing energy of life. And these are these portraits again of these kind of worried, preoccupied mothers. Here's a little side view to show you kind of the 2D, 3D. And then the last work I'm going to show you from this exhibition, it's not everything, but I want to get to the other shows, is this work on the left. It's titled Fertility Cornucopia. So a cornucopia, as you probably know, is a horn of plenty, right? It's a tradition of mostly paintings where you see a horn, a ram's horn, and out of it come flowing the gifts of nature, of our agriculture, usually wheat and fruit and things like that. That's a cornucopia. But I wanted to make something for my exhibition that was between a cornucopia and a memento mori. A memento mori painting is, these are like Dutch old masters used to make these, is a still life painting that shows something like a candle dripping wax, or a skull sometimes sitting on the table, or a wild animal like a hare or a fish that's just been caught and is literally just died and has sat on the table. Fruit that's so ripe it's about to burst. And memento mori literally translates to remember death. And to remember death is what makes life so precious. To know that life has an end, that we will all pass at some point, is what makes our lives so precious. And I think fertility is a similar thing. Fertility is both a reminder of these gifts of nature that we have within us, the abundance of nature, but it also is a reminder of the fleetingness of that. So the cornucopia is filled with either fruits or things you're supposed to eat to make you fertile in different cultures, a papaya, some pomegranates, a fish. There's also a stork here, right? Of course, the mythology of the miracle that brings us life. But there's also a pretty kind of almost scientific illustration of an ovary full of eggs with a fallopian tube attached to it. And at the top is this fish. I copied this fish from an old master painting, a memento mori, where the fish is sitting in an enamel bowl and literally looks like it's about to take its very last gasp of air. And on its nose, I balanced an hourglass. The hourglass is an image that also recurs in my work a lot, that is both the kind of ultimate reminder that time is running out, right? Here's another image of an hourglass from the show. But it's also this kind of magical clock that you can always flip and it starts again. So in a way, it's also like the fertility cycle, right? Every month we have a chance again to become pregnant, and then we drain out and then we start again until we don't anymore. Okay, so that was my exhibition, and I have plenty more to show you, but I want to get to the other artists. Wayne, I don't know if you want to ask any questions now.
Gabriela, there's one question. I mean, we will be careful not to spend the entire episode on just your first installation as a puzzle. I feel like each puzzle piece we could go into great detail, and we won't have the time to do that. But there is one question that someone in the audience asked about that is perhaps hard to discern from viewing this on Zoom, and not being able to look at individual segments as well as the whole. The question is about joy in motherhood, and where that might be depicted in the piece. Is how do you relate to that question? How do you relate to joy in motherhood in the work itself?
Yeah, I mean, I derive a lot of, I wouldn't say really just joy. Of course, there's a lot of joy for me in being a motherhood, but it has given meaning to my life in a way that I only thought art could before. It has filled my life in a way that I didn't even realize was missing before. In this work, I think, there's a lot of joy of motherhood. For example, in the Amphora work I showed, where there's like very, very intimate scenes of me and my daughter, and it's very serene and peaceful and joyous.
Mm.
In Mom, the work didn't start from a joyous place. The work started from a survival place, a place of, as we all felt in the beginning of the pandemic to certain extents of we have to preserve our lives and the lives of the ones near us. So it came from a very protective place, a very determined place, a very kind of nurturing place, and also a place of struggle for sure. But the joy here is the fact that I then spent months celebrating this experience by making it in the studio and really making it the largest work I'd ever done until that moment. So for me, the joy came as an artist being able to take this rather difficult period and make something meaningful out of it.
Thank you for that reflection on it, and again, it's an entire show that. So let's transition to Felix, a different kind of survivor struggle story.
Yeah.
I'm very curious to hear how you frame this.
Sure. So this is a show that just recently closed at Werner Gallery in New York, in Chelsea, by the late artist Felix Gonzalez-Torres. This is kind of the main exhibition space. We're going to come back to this work, but I wanted to introduce you to Gonzalez-Torres first. Here he is in the center with the black shades, born in Cuba in 1957 and died in the States at age 38 from AIDS-related causes. And you're seeing him here with his partner of many years, who died in the beginning of the 90s, in 90 or 91. So as you see, Felix Gonzalez-Torres came of age both as an artist and as a man during the height of the AIDS epidemic, and it's really what marked his work. But something that he said in an interview, he said, "I'm never going to make sensational work about this. You'll never see me hang like 2 vials of AIDS blood on the wall," is what he said. I'm gonna deal with my grief and with the public crisis that we are in my own way. And he was a very, very thoughtful, almost minimal kind of artist. I also want to say Felix Gonzalez-Torres did not have a studio, and this was a matter of principle. He made his work conceptually. He had ideas for his work, but the work wouldn't happen until he had an exhibition, an opportunity to show the work, and then he would just make it for the space. So this is a work from 91, very shortly after his lover died. It's called Perfect Lovers. And all it is 2 battery-operated wall clocks. You buy them new. These are the instructions for making the work. You buy them new. You put new batteries into them. You sync them perfectly, as you see, and then you hang them on the wall. And the point of this work is that one of the batteries inevitably will run out before the other one. So you can see how the grief, the loss, the love in his work is so subtly introduced. It's so elegantly introduced. Here's one of the first iterations of the candy pieces that he became very famous for. You can see it there kind of in the background of an exhibition he had in LA in the same year. And you can see it's called, all his work are called untitled, but then the real title is in parentheses, Portrait of Ross in LA. Ross was his partner. And the series of these works that are installed in different ways every time is they are piles of candy that we, the viewers, are invited to come and take and eat and take away with us. And they are replenished by the gallery staff at the end of every day or at the end of every week. So the materials for these works are always defined as endless supply of candy, but it starts from an ideal weight. And all the portraits of Ross, and these are all different iterations of the same work, started from the weight that Ross was before he became sick. And of course, that as the audience, we are depleting that weight. Very also Christian iconography in my eyes, relating to the body of Christ. So something very holy, very reverent, but at the same time kind of miraculous, right? Because we don't just take the candy and then it disappears, but the gallery replenishes it every day. So also very hopeful in that way. This is an earlier work. There's a public art fund in New York that still exists today that encourages visual artists to make work in the public realm. And they gave Felix Gonzalez-Torres a billboard on Christopher Street in '89. And this is all he did. It's a black background with text on it. People with AIDS Coalition, 1985. Police harassment, 1969, et cetera, Harvey Milk, 1977. So some of these dates are like the Stonewall Rebellion, 1969, are extremely political events, but something like police harassment, 1969, could be just something that happened to one person. So these wall texts and text works are always these combinations of political and personal events. Here's another work that was shown in Glasgow at a public art biennial in '91. And you see there's no explanatory text. You're just supposed to kind of walk by it and suddenly go, huh, that's not a commercial for anything. What is that? Of course, it's an empty bed with the two marks of heads that used to be in that bed. All the work is extremely elegiac, extremely mournful, but also very, very beautiful and wistful. This says in German, it's just a matter of time. Remember, this is a time when people are fighting for public acknowledgement of the AIDS crisis, that it even is a thing. This is a work that will appear in the exhibition. We're going to go back to the exhibition. You see it's a big sky, big empty sky with one bird flying through it. And at the exhibition in David's Werner, it appears as this tiny little thing that you have to get really, really close to. And when you come close, you see it's one of the similar images, but he made it into a puzzle. So he was always playing with how to show photographs, how to show objects. It was never obvious the way his art would be shown. So sometimes he would show his photographs on a giant billboard outside. Sometimes it would be this tiny little puzzle that he had made at a commercial printing place. In the exhibition, these images appear again at a kind of adjacent space to the gallery on these giant indoor billboards. So sometimes the work is really huge, sometimes it's really small. You get to walk around these things and kind of see both the back and the front of them. And I wanted to show you a work that is not in the exhibition, but is one of my favorite works of his. It's these kind of platforms, and they're called Untitled go-go dancing platforms. He started making them in the early 90s. And these would just sit there in the gallery, these kind of perfect empty stages, but they also, of course, look like pedestals for some minimal sculpture with light bulbs around them, empty. Until suddenly, every day or every week, this would happen. And I'm going to share a video with you. each of these sculptures comes with, or someone is hired to do a go-go dancing routine on the spread that turns into a stage. The go-go dancers change from exhibition to exhibition, from week to week. They're usually men, but sometimes they're women. They bring their own music in their headphones, and they just dance, sometimes for half an hour, sometimes for an hour. And when they're done, they leave, and we're back to this minimal, perfect sculpture. But what I love about these sculptures specifically is the life that the dancers bring. Suddenly, an artist's work that's so much about loss and about death has so much life and joy and energy. It really disrupts the museum kind of, a very orderly image, right? To have a go-go dancer wearing barely anything, dancing joyously in the center. It's really one of my favorite works of his, because it has that element of joy. So the last thing I want to show you from Gonzalez-Torres is that image that I started with. So let me show you a few closer up images of this work. It's one of the last pieces he made before he passed away, called Sagittario or Sagittarius. And they are basically very, very shallow reflecting pools filled with water that you can see. You can get really, really, really close to them. And the place where they both almost touch, if a lot of people walk through the space, if a lot of air gets moved around in the space, the water will eventually spill a little bit from one to the other. So it's both a work about intimacy, and it has been shown in a few different ways. Here's an example from the Venice Biennial, where it was shown in two kind of marble platforms. So it's both a work about intimacy, but of course, it's so obviously also a work about contamination, about, about moving fluids from one body to another, which is an inescapable thing to think about in relation to the AIDS epidemic. And I love the way he brought into the gallery, that's like the parallel of those clock pieces that we started with, those two circles side by side. But he brought to the gallery both the beauty of his work and also the inherent anxiety inside of the work. So that's a tiny glimpse at the very, very fascinating world of Felix Gonzalez-Torres. I don't know if you see any questions, Wayne, that you'd like me to answer before I go to our next artist.
No, I think we'll jump into the third to make sure we get all in, and then we'll have a little time at the end.
Sure. So the last work I want to show you is by a young artist named Sophia Narret, an American artist who's 35 years old. She's currently showing at Gallery Perrotin in the Lower East Side. It's a French gallery, a very big French gallery that has a location in the city. And it's a very, very big show with a few pretty small pieces. Here is Sophia in her studio. She embroiders her paintings. Before we jump into the images, I wanna let you hear her talk about her work. You'll excuse the format and size of this video. The gallery made it for Instagram, so it's square. But here's a short video, a minute, with Sophia Narret talking about her work and this show. What you're seeing is you're actually seeing the artist putting finishing touches on the work as it was already hanging in the gallery.
I was originally a painter. I was always more excited about the narrative than making the painting. When I found embroidery, I was just as excited about the material execution as I was about the story. The thread really freed me up It kind of removed some of the baggage of trying to make a good figure painting. The set palette, the slow nature, and forcing me to make every mark count. These limitations actually opened up new possibilities for me.
So just a moment so you can hear her and you can see her working. So like she said, she started off as a painter, but very quickly found her language to be not in paint on canvas, but in thread and fabric. And this show is all about the rapture of love around this ceremony of marriage. And I don't know if some of you must already recognize there's a man wearing a tallis in the background there, and a bride kind of flying to meet him. A little biographical detail about Sophia is that she is engaged to be married and converted to Judaism a year ago. So the work in this show is very much about this fascination and being really enamored with the Jewish ceremonies, among others, around love and marriage and romance. But what I think is amazing about her work is really how she paints with thread. That's why I was so happy to be able to bring you these really, really close-up images of the work. So you really, really see how this is all thread, just kind of sewn piece by piece, thread by thread into a backing. And as you can see, her work it's not circumscribed into the circle of the embroidery loop or into a frame. She kind of starts from an embroidery loop, but then she builds out. There's actually an aluminum framework behind the work that's very well hidden that holds this thing together, but it means her work also kind of breaks the rectangle or the circle and is just very, very free formed. Here's a picture of her studio, the way the gallery posted it online, but I also found another image of the studio that the artist posted online. So sometimes there's a little bit of a difference between the way galleries present their artists and what reality really is. One of the things that she talks about in her in interviews is an encounter with this body of work. It's a series of tapestries from the 15th century called The Lady and the Unicorn in Paris. And this is, as she describes it, the work that made her stop being a painter and turn to embroidery. So this is a silk and wool tapestry from the late 15th century. I won't go into too much detail, but I did want to show you some actual detail of the embroidered nature of this work. Remember, this is hundreds of years old, and look how evocative, how colorful, how sensual it is. Look at that horn, look at that hair flowing, look at that hand. And Narret says that when she saw this tapestry, and by the way, the tapestry is all about the 5 different senses. There's 5, and then the 6th one, which is this one, is called à mon seul désir, to my only love, or to my heart's own desire. And this panel is dedicated to love and to commitment. And I really see the kind of remnants of that in her work. Here's another work from the show, a scene at the bowling alley. Sorry, at the skating rink. There's another one with the bowling alley. And we see an embrace. Many of Narret's figures are often in pairs, where one is dressed and the other one is nude. She said she's very interested in what happens between 2 people when one is dressed and one is not. Here are her referees. It's funny to think of referees of love. Here's some of the edges of this work. Really beautiful, beautiful craftsmanship alongside the art. I'm actually going to skip this work and I want to show you something else. I brought you a few earlier works of hers. Here's kind of the big picture, and I'm showing you some details. This piece is called The Day We Met. I brought you some of the more tame examples of the work that Sophia Narret had done before, because I was pretty sure that if I showed you some of the very, very explicitly sexual scenes that she has been embroidering until now, the algorithm will shut us down. Really, really explicit stuff. But I brought you some very tame examples. This is a woman who has made her career both in this embroidery methods, kind of painting and embroidery, which she's really unique for, but also her imagery was extremely sexual, almost pornographic. So it's very interesting to see this show coming to a whole different place in the work, because she's in a different place in her life. This is a couple where you see the woman in kind of a lavender dress being summoned by the man. He's pointing to that kind of window with a little house, like, come make a home with me kind of thing. There's another figure in the background with a butterfly net. And the last work I want to show you from this exhibition is this work, the marriage scene. In the center is a really kind of tender embrace between the bride and groom. Look at how she manages to really make an expression with the thread. I think it's so remarkable. But they are surrounded by these figures, these nude female figures who are also straddling or flying up to these canvases on the wall. And suddenly we realize they're not just nude kind of banshee type figures, they are painters. You see how this figure is holding a blue brush and is actually painting the painting of the bride and the groom. So in a way, these are these self-portraits of the artist as she's making work about what's going on in her life. So a really complex, fascinating artist that I'm so excited to follow her career and kind of see where her life trajectory and her art trajectory take her to. So this is Sophia Narret at Periton Gallery in the Lower East Side. So I hope I left us a few moments for questions, Wayne.
You did, and gave us so much material to reflect on and really rejoice in the creativity of each of the three artists. I'm very struck in this last series of Sophia's work of that image of the referees and thinking about who are the judges constantly who are making rules around both what is depicted as well as how it's depicted. So let's start first with the idea of that we'll take for granted here. These are art paintings, yet she's not using what people typically think of as the material for a painting. The level of detail, I mean, I'm guessing embroidery has its own world of referees and judges and art shows, but how do you see that moving into art galleries in New York? Is it now sort of just being viewed that it doesn't matter what the material is? It's telling a story. It has a narrative. She has her clearly an incredibly accomplished style of her work. Does it matter what we call it? Embroidery, painting, embroidery?
It matters a lot less than it used to be. The art world has definitely had its referees who kept a lot of things and a lot of people out for many, many years. Not just forms of making art, but who gets to make art and who gets to be in the limelight. So, spoiler alert, it's mostly been white European men who have been allowed to not only make art, but determine what is important. And in many ways, that also led to a centering of certain ways to make art. For example, sculpture and painting, and a marginalization of methods of making art that were considered feminine or domestic, like embroidery, like ceramics, like weaving. And that's all getting blown up right now in the moment that we're in right now. Not only are many other voices being not only heard, but really welcomed and centered in the art world, whether it be the LGBTQ community, women, people of color, people who are just not from the center of the Western world and from art centers, but also ways of making art, methods of making art. So we're in a really exciting moment in that regard.
Well, just a quick shout out, because I understand we have family members of the Narret family from Montclair, New Jersey that are in the audience today. So we want to give a shout out to the incredible work that Sophia is doing and having the opportunity to showcase it here. Gabriela, quick question on Felix.
There's a family member of Sophia's.
Yep, that's the note I got.
Montclair?
That's what I got.
Well, I live in Montclair now. So that's very nice. Shout out to Sophia's relatives in Montclair. Please tell her that.
Okay, we'll definitely make sure to make make sure we can connect you offline as well. In Felix's work, when you showed the fascinating improvisation of having a go-go dancer, join the stage and add the element of life to the piece. I just wanted to be explicit about that. Was that an instruction from the artist beforehand, and then it sort of lives on as a legacy to the life even after his passing? Is that
absolutely. It's a big part of the work. It was part of his instruction for the work, and everything is as he said, down to the metallic silver underwear, everything.
Wow.
Specified by him. Yeah.
And we're running out of time, but just one more quick one. A question earlier about one of your works, that was in the Hour piece. Was that the audience member was asking whether that was a depiction of or symbolic of the reproductive organs in any way?
Yeah, absolutely. So that work, I can share my screen real quick one more time to just show what I mean. Yeah. So yeah, the hourglass image is a lot of things. I didn't want to take up too much time getting into it, but especially in this work, that this is both an hourglass, but the sides of the hourglass are clearly veined. So in a way, it's also an interior of a body. It can be a cervix. And also those lines on the sides, for me, are both like symbolizing two pregnant bellies kind of meeting, but also the inside of the body and the tissues of muscle in the body. So it's our bodies as an hourglass for sure. Well,
Gabriela, what a real treat, what a real opening for all of us as we start spring. Good news for all of our, and particularly your fans out there. Gabriela will be back with us later in spring, May 24th, when we move to, some of you that are with us on these programs know we often or periodically do segments on Wednesdays to accommodate for people where Sunday is not the best day. And we will begin to shift Gabriela's art gallery tours to Wednesdays. So the first one we're doing on Wednesday, mark it on your calendar now, May 24th. You will get an invite. There will be new artists for you to meet, see, and enjoy. So that's coming around the corner, but just the program note that it'll be on Wednesdays going forward with Gabriela. Now, we have another program before then on a Wednesday, which is going to be this month on Wednesday, March 22nd. Come back and join us for a program that will be about education in Jerusalem from an expert that is Jerusalem-based, as well as a visiting delegation from the United States of American School Administrators, the Association of American School Administrators, that will be in Israel with the American Israel Friendship League through our delegation program. So everyone, lots of great program material in front of you for the coming spring. We are grateful to have you here with us today, even if you lost an hour, some of you, on your Sunday today. We hope we gave you a twofer, that the hour you lost, that we sort of made it up with 2 times the amount of joy, insight, and inspiration from the 3 artists that Gabriela shared with us today. So have a great week.
Sorry, before we hang up,
yeah,
I'm sharing in the chat the links to the 3 shows that we saw. I will also send them by email to you guys. But for those of you who want to dive right in, I already put the Zwirner, I already put Sophia and my exhibitions, and I'm getting you the Zwirner link momentarily so that you have it, even if you don't get the recording.
These are all just introductions. We want everyone to get real curious and real excited and I don't know, take out some materials, whether it's something you can embroider with or something like that started Gabriela's first piece of the puzzle, started just with pencils, as our colored pencils that were around. So make sure you have some crayons or pencils or paints or something around you. Grab it, start writing on the wall, you know, whatever medium inspires you. Bring some art into the world in your own homes, and certainly get out to the galleries and enjoy the creations that remind us why, you know, of the joys, even with the challenges that happens in life. Thanks so much, Lahitro. Have a great and safe week.
Bye-bye. Thank you.